Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and it's another two back or not two back, although this time I'm starting something new, or at least I'm going to maybe start something new. We'll see. We'll try it out this week. But two back or not to back is the weekly show where I go over all the Kickstarters, all the stuff. Does it make sense to back them? What are the actual games themselves? All the usual, the things you've come to expect from the series, assuming you're used to the series. If you're new here, hi, welcome aboard. Please subscribe and like the video and all that stuff, because that's really important, is what YouTube tells me. But here's the thing we're starting this week. It's a new thing, and more specifically, I'm starting every episode of Two Back or Not to Back off with a classic game that's readily available, that is well rated, that I personally love, that is available for much cheaper than many of these games. Because today, across the course of this video, we're going to go through a lot of games of various price points, and even the cheapest of them are often unknown games that have price points that are usually in the $50 plus range, when you can usually get a beloved classic that is well rated for that price. And sometimes people choose the Kickstarter one because they're new and shiny. So, both to remind you that very good games are available for cheaper, as well as to potentially take a little bit off a spin off the new FOMO, all that. Every episode of Two Back or Not to Back will start with one particular game that is available, or in this case, we have Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization. Ranked 9th highest on Board Game Geek, an 8.4, an amazing experience. Through the Ages is basically available almost anywhere for in the $45 to $55 range, and that's new. If you're willing to buy this used copy over here, like new over here, $30 for this particular used copy of the game, plus shipping, you might be walking away with $40 spent to get an incredible experience. Nothing wrong with like new, nothing wrong with that. Or you can just go on Amazon and buy $55, or Game Nerds and get it for $50, or whatever price point they currently are at. But Through the Ages is one of the best games that has gone through multiple reprintings. I mean, this is the new Story of Civilization from 2015, but the original game has been around for a lot longer. I've played the new, I've played the old. I have recently been diving into the Leaders and Wonders expansion for the new one. It is one of the best Civ-based games, abstracted to a degree because you have tableau building. Fantastic game by Vladish Vatil and produced by CGE, and it's available for a much better price point than almost anything we will talk about today. And with that, let's go ahead and start off with Board Game Adjacent. We usually go through a few sequences here, from Board Game Adjacent to games not funding or cancellations or all of that, to updates from the prior week, which we won't have this week because we skipped last week, so we didn't have an episode last week, and then from there into the new campaigns. Starting off with Board Game Adjacent with one more quest, a dexterity-based RPG, comedy RPG. This is coming to you from what is it again? It's Horrible Guild. They used to be Horrible Games, so I always have to pause when I say the name. Is it Horrible Guild? Is it Horrible Games? It's Horrible Guild. They make actually quite good games. But One More Quest is leaning heavily into the RPG elements, as well as what you've seen from Dungeon Fighter. If you've seen Dungeon Fighter from them, Dungeon Fighter is a dungeon game where you using dexterity, you toss dice to try to hit various bullseyes. Toss it under your leg, toss it over your back, do whatever, whole bunch of ways, but it's basically kind of a little bit of a comedy / our dexterity-based dungeon game. One More Quest is leaning heavily into that with the RPG elements of things, but still sticking with the whole tossing dice randomly aspect of the game. You can watch the video. It's a great video. I highly recommend it. There's a few great videos we'll be talking about today, but this is One More Quest. The price point on this one, and I usually don't go into does it make sense to back these or not. I don't know the RPG market. It's not something I'm familiar with, but you could $22 or 22 euros, $26 for the digital version, or $63 for the starter set if you want to get your hands on that. And then they have some other pledge levels as well to increasingly spend more and more money in this very unique dexterity-based RPG system in which you're not rolling dice so much as tossing them to land on the specific bullseye, plus add in all the other RPG elements. I'm not an RPG person myself, so whenever I cover these games, I typically just say things like, and all the other RPG elements. From there we have Rogue Angel's Legacy of the Burning Suns. Rogue Angel's Legacy of the Burning Suns unfortunately canceled. 397 backers, $42,000 raised, and $42,000 is not a small amount. They did fairly well over there, but they had a funding goal of $400,000. Now, I'm going to be a drop. Mean is the wrong word here, but I'm going to be a drop direct about this one, which is basically talking about the update in which going through why it canceled. And there's a bunch of reasons he goes into, and that's great in Sun Tzu Games. If you're watching this, good luck on the next campaign, and I apologize for being a little bit direct about some aspects here. But apparently it's partially my fault that it failed. My fault and Board Game Ramblings and Watch It Played. And there's a whole aspect, point 7 here, where he talks about how the large creators are firing off too much content, from top 10 lists to games leaving the collection to all these other things that clog the board game space and prevent your game from getting eyeballs or something like that. Now, granted, I will acknowledge that as somebody who does some of these videos, my pushback here will be a little bit amusing. Not a little bit amusing, a little bit personal perhaps, but the The short version is I don't think that is a factor to anything. I think that very often smaller creators, or first-time creators, I should say, not smaller, over prioritize how much of an impact big eyes can have on a game. Content creators in general shine a spotlight on things, but I can point to a dozen campaigns where you have Rado and Dice Tower and Man vs. Meeple, and pick whatever large content creators you have on the campaign that raised less than $42,000. $42,000 is a great start. I just think at the end of the day, a $400,000 goal. I mean, for context here, Granja, which we'll be talking about shortly, has $285,000 raised for a big box reprint from an established publisher for a well-loved, well-rated game. That is $285,000 raised. The fact that Rogue Angels has $42,000 but wanted $400,000, you're doing tremendously well already. You already managed to do fairly well. The price point on Rogue Angels is fairly expensive, and there are a bunch of other factors you go through, and I acknowledge that, and I think you should focus on those, but I think you're potentially over-prioritizing the impact that larger creators have on a project. We all shine a spotlight. Content creators shine a spotlight on a campaign, but other factors are factors as to why people do and don't back, and I think that if you focus too much on that one side aspect, you might be letting a non-relevant point hold you back. So that's overall, but I'm going to keep doing my games leaving the collection videos just for the record, but that's Rogue Angels. So good luck on the future campaign. Again, $42,000 is incredibly successful. It's just you had a barrier that was higher than that, and that will be a factor in terms of how you come back to Kickstarter. Moving on to Yokai Septet's second edition. $10,000 raised, 520 backers. This is the second edition of Yokai Septet. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I don't know for sure. But this is a trick-taking game. This is a trick-taking experience, one in which you are basically trying to win the sevens. Now, the part that's interesting about this is each of the suits have 7 ranked somewhere differently in the order. So in one suit, it might be the lowest number. It might be 7 to 14. Another suit, it might be 1 to 7. Another suit, it might be 5 to 12. You're going to have all these different ranges. So while you're trying to win the 7, where and how you win the 7 is different. And the game's going to be slightly different if you're playing as 2 players, 3 players, or 4 players. 4 players will play as teams because you're trying to win a majority of the 7s, but you don't want to win all the 7s. So the 7s are placed in different areas. You don't want to win all of them. You want to win most of them, which leads to an interesting balance that as soon as you might be getting most of them, but if the other player hasn't won any, now suddenly there's this drive to make the other player win all of the 7s, which means now you're trying to lose it. I have recently started to like trick-taking games, which is something that I used to really not like tricking games. If I saw trick-taking on a game, I'd immediately avoid it. But I've gone to the opposite end now. Now when I see trick-taking, I'm automatically intrigued, and that's because I've recently, personally, had a resurgence of games that have trick-taking as a mechanic that I have started enjoying, and therefore diving into others and enjoying some of those, not all of them. I still don't like trick-taking some places, and I still like it other places, but this is Yokai Septet. It sold out originally. They came out with the second edition. This is the one that's currently available, and this is available for $17 for a second edition copy, $32 for 2 second edition copies. This will be available likely, I mean, there has generally lower availability after the fact, but the last one was available on the publisher's website. Some might make its way to retail. As far as holding its value on this one, overall $17 plus shipping at the end of the day is likely going to be a game that will not hold its value. It might be the cheapest place for you to get it, because depending on the shipping on the website and how much that costs, it may be the cheapest opportunity to get it by potentially a few dollars, but not by a significant amount, and you definitely will not make your money back on this one. That's the price, that's the curse of smaller games. It's hard to pay $17 plus shipping and then get your money back. So this is one that if you're interested in it, Kickstarter might be the best place to get your hands on it, but it's not one that is going to hold its value. Moving on to I Guess This Is It from Button Shy Games, which is going to fall into that same category value-wise. Again, Button Shy is always fairly classic. 5 days to go, 1,100 backers, and this is a bit of a shift from Button Shy's usual thing. Value-wise, it's what I just said about Yokai Septet. It's a smaller game, although in the case of Button Shy, and consistently, Kickstarter is the cheapest price point to get it, unless you want to start dabbling in the secondhand market. But if you want to get the game at retail or from the website or on Kickstarter, Kickstarter is usually the best place to get it. Once you get those modules, the extras, you save a few bucks, not a lot, or you can wait and get it directly from the website, or you can potentially wait and get it secondhand market, which you might save a few dollars, but again, smaller price point, and again, it's one that will not hold its value. As far as the game itself, as far as the game in terms of what it's doing over here, this is Button Shy actually branching into RPG, and they're going to be doing a bunch of these. This is the first in their RPG line. Not all of them will necessarily be on Kickstarter, but this one is. This is I Guess This Is It, a game about saying goodbye. 2 players who are going to simulate some sort of relationship, maybe your business partners, your siblings, your partners, husband, wife, whatever it is you are, Again, giving it reason why you're saying goodbye. And you can go through those roles over here, going through this little together decide what's the reason you're saying goodbye, what's your relationship, where does the goodbye take place, and from there you're going to be chaining various symbols together using the prompts on the card and the matching symbols to drive the storytelling narrative of the game. For me, this is a straight up stay far, far away personally, not for you necessarily, but personally. Role-playing as a genre, I can sort of get into a little bit when you mix and match it within another system. So a good example would be Iridia, the Pass, Read, or Tread. I can kind of get into the role I'm playing when it's a subset of the greater ecosystem at play. But this is way too much into actual role-playing, which on a personal level is something I don't particularly enjoy and feel a bit silly doing. But if you like role-playing, this seems like it's going to be a very quick and easy entry point, taking the accessibility of button-shy games and applying it to the RPG genre and giving you the first of potentially many role-playing experiences that they will be delving into as they continue to go through it. You can see over here, we have the family dinner, and we have the time travel, and all these other prompts you'll have. This one, by the way, is potentially the most intriguing because it's a Rorschach test, and that's a whole different, interest level. Anyways, moving from there to Granja Deluxe Master Set, which we briefly talked about. $286,000 raised, 3,175 backers, 4 days to go. This one's closing up. There's a gameplay over on Quackalope, there's a review over on my channel, there's a round 1 over Man vs. Meeple, plenty of content around the game, and possibly more coming, although with 5 days to go, I guess maybe 4 days to go, not a lot of time left. And the Granja Deluxe Master Set is going to be bringing board and dice. They're once again doing another Master Set, the same way they did with Snowdonia, the same way they did with the other one, Snowdonia and the... Oh my gosh, it's going to bother me. They have another Master Set they've done. I can't remember what the name of it's called. Yido. Yeah, they did Yido. And this is going to be the third one in the series. Same publisher, same manufacturer, same literally factory who did the same production. So you're going to see that same run. And if you've backed Yido, if you have Yido in your collection, you'll know that the pieces are absolutely amazing quality, very stand up beautifully. The art on the pieces are amazing. Very much looking forward to this implementation of the game. As far as what it actually is, it's La Granja, and then it's deluxeified. It's bigger box. And they actually have a bigger box in case you're interested in that. Although that might be more than you need. Just looking at it on a surface level, to give context, in my review, I had people saying, is this the La Granja Deluxe set, or is this the La Granja, the bigger upgrade set? To give you context, so that's like watching an actual content of the game on the table, people weren't sure if that was already the size upgrade. So that should tell you that the one you currently have, or the base game version at $89, is going to be plenty for you, and while you could get the La Granja pledge, it's likely not something you personally need. It's likely going overkill as far as size, great for conventions and that kind of thing, but likely more than you need on your own personal table. Past that, though, it's not just an art upgrade, it's not just a component upgrade, they're also introducing a ton of modules for the game. An absolute ton of modules. So scrolling down past the components, where you basically see all the modules but doesn't actually tell you anything, we have over here, we have the Turks cards and the bustling town buildings, and there's a whole bunch. I mean, I'm not gonna focus on everything because between stretch goals, between modules, there's a lot to go over on this page. But they basically have a dozen designers who got involved and are adding, I think it's like a dozen modules, maybe it's 11 modules, I don't know what we're up to exactly, but this is taking a popular, well-rated, well-ranked game and giving you a deluxe set around the game. I've enjoyed the game. I already liked the original La Granja, but it wasn't one that stayed in my collection. And for me, this upgraded set, I don't think it is one that would stay in my collection either, except for those modules. I like the game enough that I want to continuously dive down into it. Again, you can check out the review for more information, and I want to see more about it. I tend to be in that interesting place with the Euros where I tend to prioritize fun over strategy. And I mean, I want the strategy too, but I don't want it to come at the cost of letting me do fun, cool things. And this one falls a little bit in the middle range. There are cool moments, but it's also a little bit restricted to how much you can do. I'm hoping the modules open it up for me. As it was, I gave it a 4 to 5. Really enjoyed this one, and I'm looking forward to diving into it more. That's all the side point. This is not a review segment. This is more of a to back or not to back. And speaking of which, getting into the value aspect of things, looking at board and dice's prior sets, Yido as well as Snowdonia Master Set. If this follows the same trend, and it may or may not, La Granja is a well-loved, well-rated game, so it may actually end up being a little further ahead. But even if you just look at their other games and their past big box sets and how they fared, in general, they tend to do well holding their value just fine after the Kickstarter initially launches and lands. So when it first arrives, they do a great job holding their value, and then as time goes on, they tend to filter down a bit. There is exclusive content here. If you want the game, you want the exclusive content, you should go ahead and back the Kickstarter if you don't want to dabble in the secondhand market. If you want to dabble in the secondhand market, because as far as retail, this is your cheapest opportunity likely to get your hands in it based on past sets. If you're willing to dabble in the secondhand market, this is one where, or if you want to sell your own copy, this is one where in the past, right after the Kickstarter, for the first period of time, whatever it might be, if several months, this is one where you likely will get your money back. but as time goes on, it will drift away a bit, and you might start losing $10, losing $15, $20 on the game. So over a longer period of time, the other ones haven't held their value as much. Again, Granja might be an exception. It might be because it's a higher rated game, because it's got more of a lineage to it, it might hold its value for longer or for forever. Those are possible. I would say if you're backing this one, it falls into that somewhat safe but not perfectly safe category as far as whether to get it now, secondhand market, or all of that. And that's the Granja Deluxe Master Set. Moving on, we have Finding Anastasia Deluxe Edition. 8 days to go, 361 backers, $19,000 raised. This is actually their second hit on Kickstarter. They had a prior hit on Kickstarter, and unfortunately they canceled. They're relaunching it, and now we have Finding Anastasia. I think it's Finding, not I instinctively say Anastasia because that's the movie that I know. I believe they pronounced it Finding Anastasia, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, the game itself is a hit and roll game which you're trying to take actions as you are various characters in the system as you try to find Anastasia. They have a bunch of options as far as the upgrades. We have the basic pledge over here giving you $35 for the deluxe edition of the game and all stretch goals, and then $59 for the all-in deluxe, basically an extra $24, an extra $24 that gives you a bunch of things, including extra coins, the Velvet Joint we have over here. We have the deluxe game plus the following: the Enchanted Gems expansion, the Palace Servants expansion, and the playmat. So they give you a decent amount extra for those $24. If you are getting the game, I'd be more inclined to get the all-in deluxe as opposed to the regular deluxe over here. Past that, as far as holding its value or not, this is one that likely will not hold its value. At the end of the day, this is a smaller game with a smaller subset of people who are looking for it, so it does fall in the category where it might hold its value individually just because there's not a lot of people who are backing it. And that does mean that people who want the game after are trying to buy it from a very small pool of people who are reselling it. And I don't think this one's going to see heavy retail availability, but also it will have similarly lower demand. So lower demand, but lower availability. So it might be one that you can actually get your money back, but I would be skeptical of that. As far as, is this the best opportunity to get it? Unless you're willing to engage in the secondhand market, this is the likely best place to get your hands in it. Again, because I just don't see it hitting retail with the 363 backers as of right now. I'm glad it's funded, but it's not like hitting that amount you usually need to see it get a retail distribution. Obviously exceptions apply, but likely the best opportunity to get it if you don't want to dabble in the secondhand market. From there we move to Thunder Road Vendetta. This is another cancellation and relaunch, although this one got several $100,000 before canceling the first time. Thunder Road Vendetta from Restoration Games, 6,151 backers, $633,000 raised, 8 days to go. Thunder Road Vendetta is bringing you back Thunder Road, but it's cleaning up a lot of gameplay aspects, adding more elements to the game, adding more expansions to modify the game even further. The basic idea of the game system is racing along the road and trying to take out others along the way. Trying to be mindful of staying on the road, of speeding up, of slowing down, of going off path, of ramming into mountains, of calling in helicopters, of healing your car, doing all these things in yet another racing and fighting experience. Although yet another in the sense that the original Thunder Road came first, but in this past year we've had a bunch of games that fall into this category. We've had Megapulse, we've had another game from Horrible Guild, I can't remember, Tiny Turbo Cars, we've had Death Road All-Stars, and now we have Thunder Road Vendetta, another game in that racing fighting genre, fighting car genre. As far as Thunder Road Vendetta, there's going to be two main pledge levels. There's going to be over here the $50 for the Hit the Gas, giving you the base game and a few stretch goals and unlock stretch goals and some extras. The wash on your cars, because your miniatures are going to get unwashed. It's Kickstarter exclusive. And then you have the Friendly Local Grease Monkey, and you have the Maximum Chrome over here, which is $145 for everything, giving you the base game, the expansions, the deluxe, stretch goals, all that stuff. Let's scroll down to the expansions. And by the way, I highly recommend watching the video. If you watch the video on the campaign page, this is like a 2-minute long video that will give you a good feel for the actions and choices and the way the game plays out. So I do highly recommend this video if you want a quick 2-minute idea of how the game plays. Past that, a bunch of other content around the game, including they got on Smosh apparently, so they're on Smosh and they have Smosh Plays the Game. They also have Before You Play. Personally, I prefer Before You Play, but I'm glad they have the general availability as well for leaning into that nostalgia and general wide audience. I mean, 145,000 people watched that video. That's a big deal over there. And then from there we have the expansions. We have the $40 Big Rig expansion over here, which is giving you a big rig to manage as you try to navigate through the town. A little bit more hit to your vehicle, but a little less maneuverability. And then on the reverse side, we have these 5 mini bikes giving you more maneuverability and a little less hit to your vehicle. So you can see a good example over here as you try to navigate around, smashing into a car, weaving between lanes that other cars can't otherwise do. That's gonna be one of the expansions we have. We also have the Carnage Devil's Run expansion giving you fire. Everyone wants fire. As far as stretch goals, exclusives, all of that stuff, there are going to be exclusive stuff over here. They cover it very nicely nicely in the FAQ, but the base game and primary expansions will be available as far as retail availability later. But as far as stretch goals, if you want the extras, if you want all the stuff, if you want the washed miniatures, there are going to be a bunch of things in this campaign that are exclusive, which brings us to the should you back it, should you not. And if anything, if this game is anything like Return to Dark Tower, which was like $130 on Kickstarter and is selling for nearly twice that in the secondhand market right now, this one should hold its value just fine. Now, Restoration Games is certainly not a guarantee. They had Fireball Island, which was a complete miss as far as the price point you paid on Kickstarter, as far as how much it tanked on the secondhand market. But I also think that was their first bigger, well-known restoration, and so I think that one possibly saw road bumps that we haven't seen as much since. Restoration Games is generally well known for being the best company that takes older classics and then cleans them up both visually as well as mechanically, and then re-offers them. They've had several big box ones, including Thunder Road Vendetta, including Return to Dark Tower, including Fireball Island. And they've had a lot of smaller games as well that don't hit that same level of notoriety of, $80, $100 out-of-print games. But I think you're probably pretty safe with Thunder Road Vendetta. Again, the caveat is they have had a big road bump with Fireball Island in the past, but I think that is in the past. I think since then they have gotten better, and I think Thunder Road Vendetta is likely, if you're worried about holding its value, I think this will hold its value just fine. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get your hands on this game at retail without some of those extras. If you want to save a bit of money, you can go ahead and just wait for retail and get those base retail copies of the game for significantly cheaper. Again, Fireball Island is a game you can pick up for $35 at Target, or you could have paid $120 on the Kickstarter. You do get different things with those, but you don't always need all the stuff. Or once again, our regular reminder that Through the Ages is an excellent game, available for $50, $55 or so, well rated, well loved, and you should definitely pick that one up when you have a chance. Just a regular reminder about the nature of Kickstarter and all the shiny bling and the maximum chrome and all the opportunities we have to spend lots of money, but there's lots of retail games available for cheaper. But overall, yes, this should hold its value just fine if you're getting that the maximum chrome expansion, or even if you're getting the retail stuff with the stretch goals, although I think maximum chrome is likely going to be the best hold its value pledge for this game. Moving on, we have Purple Haze by Phalanx Games, and this one's going to be a hard one to call as far as holding its value, but before we get there, Purple Haze is basically a solo / co-op game of surviving in the jungle. You're gonna have your helicopter crashed and burned, and they have to go through a bunch of sequence of tests of trying to figure out how to navigate around the jungle, how to fight the Viet Cong as far as them attacking you and going through all that, trying to build up your squad, taking hits, losing people, having potentially shooting your own people. It's going through a bit of a combination of survival, combination of story, a little bit of role play, story elements, not really role play, a little more into story or campaign snippets to the game in this solo / cooperative game. As far as why back now, you won't just receive the core game in the first large expansion, but additionally you're going to be counting on you make the game, etc., and every backer will receive GameFound exclusive content such as the Marine Squad miniature. Now, as of right now, and unless I missed something, as of right now, that's the only thing I see that is GameFound exclusive. So if you're getting the game at retail, or if you're getting the game on Kickstarter, you're currently getting an extra miniature, which isn't a lot of incentive to back as far as the exclusives. The question is the price point. And this is where it's harder to say because of prior games from Phalanx Games. Phalanx Games has a wide amount of different games with wide amounts of how successful they have been and what the price points have been like on Kickstarter versus retail. You have games like Rocketman that were, more expensive on Kickstarter than retail because it just didn't have that same degree of popular acceptance after the fact. But they have had games that did that Kickstarter, and they previously used to be a Kickstarter company. Right now they're trying out GameFound. But as far as some of their games have been a better price on Kickstarter. Some of the games have been a better price on the aftermarket when you're willing to wait. So I don't know where Purple Haze will fall. If you want the Marine Squad miniature, then obviously GameFound's the place to go. If you want anything else that they might unlock or anything I possibly missed, I couldn't find anything else that was exclusive as of right now, then sure, GameFound. Otherwise, it's a bit of a risk. GameFound might be the best price point. GameFound might not be the best price point. It depends what you care about. So as far as holding, and same thing as far as holding its value, by the way, same thing that their games have done differently in the past. It's hard to say where any one game lies. I think Purple Haze likely trends a bit more towards being likely to hold its value, but it's definitely one that I'm not confident on and therefore not willing to issue a judgment call, so to speak, on Purple Haze. But that's Purple Haze from Phalanx Games over on GameFound. Next up, we have Ostia, developed the Harbor of Ancient Rome, a strategic Mancala game, and I love how they straight up say this, inspired by Trajan. I'm very happy that they called that out. I'm very happy that they see the original inspiration for their game and call it out so that it's not a whole thing like, oh, you're basically copying whatever. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by another game system. Games do it all the time, and I think it shows a degree of appreciation for the fact that something did inspire you. I don't think anything's ever copying in these spaces. I think it's, yes, be inspired, do the next thing, learn to take that element, and it's not the same game, not by a long shot, but it definitely has some general high-level overlap. As far as the game, Ostia is from the same company that brought you Aqua Garden, which was a very large hit on Kickstarter last year, did phenomenally well, and is hard to get your hands on, which is going to factor in the should you back it, should you not. But Ostia is bringing you more of a Trajan mechanism as you try to build up your actions, as you try to build up your own personal port and move your ships around. Now, differently than Trajan, again, it might be inspired by Trajan, but it's different. Differently than Trajan, it seems to be leaning more heavily into the larger amount of boats you cash in on any one area, strengthen your action, as opposed to Trajan was more about timing and trying to get things in a thing, but never really mattered whether you triggered action with 2 or with 7. That does not seem to be the case with Ostia. It seems to be that it is more about locking in those larger actions, which just means it's a different game. That's the only takeaway there. Past that, the game itself is obviously going to be different, but this is going to be coming to you from the same company. Now, as far as should you back it, should you not, let's talk about price point first. Price point is going to be $63 for the standard set and $76 to give you the merchant expansion as well as the game, and $98 for the upgrade pack as well to give you absolutely everything for the game system. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value, all of that. This is a game that, if it's anything like Aqua Garden, and I assume it will be, I don't know for sure, obviously, but I assume it will have some degree of overlap with Aqua Garden, and if it does, then it's one that it was hard to get your hand on. It is hard to get your hand on Aqua Garden after the Kickstarter, which means copies of the game have done tremendously well on the secondhand market and have absolutely held their value. It's a game that's not that well rated. Aqua Garden's like a 7.2 or something like that. It's liked, but it's not like loved. It's well liked, well accepted, just not, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But the combined with the general acceptance, the decent ratings, the art styling of the game that's very unique, and the low availability have made it hold its value just fine. And if that's going to hold true for Ostia as well, then this is also one that will likely hold its value. I think this is a fairly safe back. There's never a guarantee with these things. This one could suddenly be picked up by any random company and be distributed very easily and available. But assuming it's anything like its older brother Aqua Garden, then this is one that should hold its value, and Kickstarter is likely going to be the cheapest price point to get your hands on it, because otherwise your options are paying a much higher premium on the secondhand market. Again, assuming things play out the same, which I assume they will. Moving on from there to Chang'An. Chang'An from the same company that brought you Momiji, I believe, last year. Momiji is a game that, well, let's not talk about Momiji, although it will come up later. Chang'An is going to be an engine-building game of gathering cards, drafting cards from a central market, and trying to place them into your board to generate a resource engine. And you're going to have different card sets every single game, keeping the experience variable. They go through, how the actual game plays out, the specific sequence. You can check out videos of Man vs. Meeple. You can check out, their video doesn't actually do a great job on it, this one where the video was not great, but there's plenty of other content if you want to check it out. And the Kickstarter has a bunch of extras, including the Silk Road expansion over here. We have the Silk Road expansion giving you another deck of cards, more variability to your engine. We also have the All-In, which will be giving you the Monk expansion, the Religion expansion, which gives you the Monk tracks and a whole bunch of monks, giving you a whole little side puzzle of moving your monks up those boards. As far as pledge levels, you have €30 for the base game, which is already a Kickstarter edition. It already comes with the Silk Road expansion, it already comes with stretch goals, unlocked exclusives, and then you have €48 or $55 for the All-In, bringing you the monks, the religion, the city coins, the metal coins for the game, bringing you all those extras over there, and $55 for that, for the amount of stuff you're getting, is not a bad price point. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? First of all, the game looks appealing. I can't speak for the actual gameplay, I haven't played it myself, but the game looks like it has a light, fun, appealing accessibility. It does not mean it's amazing, but it does call me in, no different than Momiji did last year when I covered that game. Both these games look beautiful, both these games have simple yet engaging gameplay mechanisms that seem to pull me in, and Momiji seems to be rated fairly decently, coming in at around, again, a 7.2, 7.3 on Board Game Geek, meaning it's hitting those numbers as far as being a decent game. How far that takes it is a different conversation. And I'm going to say about Chang'An, similar to what I said about Momiji last year when I covered the game, which is I said that on the one hand, I'm skeptical that it will hold its value. On the other hand, when I compare it to other games like Chai or Spirits of the Forest, sometimes these light, visually pretty games do a great job holding their value, and sometimes they're just accessible enough, and they have a deluxified version that's Kickstarter exclusive and it's hard to get your hands on, and they kind of break that rule about lighter games not holding their value. And sure enough, if you look at sales in Momiji, and it's still new, so it's hard to say for sure, but the few sales there are did do a great job of holding their value compared to how the Kickstarter did, which means Chang'An's going to fall into the same category for me. On the one hand, it looks like it's going to be a slightly lighter game, which historically have had a harder time holding their value after the fact compared to Kickstarter. On the other hand, it's Kickstarter exclusive, and it's pretty, and it's accessible, which there have been multiple games I can point to, including Momiji, their last game, that seem to break that general trend. So it's one that I think that if you are interested in this game, if I were interested in this game and I want to get my hands on this game, I would be backing it on a Kickstarter because I think it is the safer bet as far as getting it now versus paying a premium after the fact. But obviously, certainly not a guarantee. But we're doing fairly well right now with 630 backers, $31,000 raised. That's Chang'An from for something Fox game, Deer Games. I knew it was an animal, and that is Chang'An. From there we have Hens. Hens is going to be a light little set collection, not really set collection, a puzzly, place your cards down in the optimal way to score as many points as possible game. You're going to have these hens, these different colored hens you're going to be placing down, and they have rules around how they can be placed, whether they can place next to each other, but if they're of a different color, they have to be within one or whatever, trying to go for a bunch of scoring goals in the game. It's going to be one of those games that falls in the same category as games like Cascadia, Calico, any of those general games where you're trying to be mindful of different scoring criteria as you place things down with various restrictions at play. The game itself is going to fall in the category of one that's one of those smaller Kickstarter games that just, practically speaking, because of the size and the price point, is going to have a hard time holding its value. You know, a handful of cards for the game Hens for $18 plus shipping. It's one that if you want the game, if you're interested in the game, Kickstarter is likely your best opportunity. With 453 backers, it's not going to see a wide retail or availability or release, but if you are personally interested in the game and you want to know if it's going to hold its value or not, smaller games rarely do, and I assume Hens is not going to be an exception to that rule. From there we have Evolution New World. Evolution New World, 1,100 backers, 18 days to go, $56,000 raised. This is, I don't even know how to track the progression of Evolution. Evolution first came out with Evolution, the New Beginnings, I think it was, or is it the Origin of the Species? Or is this the Origin of the Species? Evolution had an original game system developed by a Russian designer that was then at some point licensed. The general concept of the game system, which is held true across all these games, is that you're basically building out these creatures and giving them traits and trying to have them survive and or eat others and fend for themselves, a bunch of traits to modify your creatures as you go. North Star Games bought out the license for Evolution, which is the most commonly well-known system of the game. Then they made Evolution Flight, they made Evolution Climate, they made Oceans after that, which is a kind of sub-variant of the game, but they've taken the system and really grown with the system. Now we have Evolution New World, which is kind of offshooting from that original game system, so the same mechanics and concepts are at play, but it's going to fall in the category of if you like Evolution, you should be paying attention and seeing if this is a game for you. If you like Evolution, the Origin of Species, you should be checking if it's one for you. If you like Evolution New Beginnings, if you like whatever the original or any of the game systems in the system, then you should check if this is one that matches for you, because this is going to be giving you the newest version of that. As far as back in the game, as far as the game, so in terms of checking where the game is different or where it lines up for you, that you can go through the various content on the game. There's a lot of content to go through if you want to see how exactly this one plays. Again, general concept is you're going to be playing down various traits to try to figure out how to survive, try to get food, to try to become a carnivore, to eat other animals. They're all playing off that same core concept with different implementations as far as how one game works versus another. As far as price point, you're going to look at $35 for the core game, or $50 if you want the butterfly effect and the stretch goals for the game. And there is going to be exclusive content in the game. So if you want the expansion, if you want to get this on Kickstarter, there is exclusive expansions in this game, exclusive cards that are being added to the game. So if that's what you're trying to be mindful of, yes, this Kickstarter has exclusive extras, exclusive cards for the gameplay. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? I'm skeptical that it will. And that's something against this particular implementation of the game. The artwork is absolutely fantastic and really pulls me in. This is this is on a personal opinion scale, this is the best artwork I've seen in the Evolution system. But in general, the Evolution system, from the original games to all the offshoots, have had enough of a following that they have done well, but typically and historically have not done that great on the secondhand market. They tend to be games that people pick up and cycle a lot. So they're all decently rated, and none of them are amazingly well rated. And I would say that unless this one somehow breaks that bank, unless this breaks that mold, that's the word I'm looking for, unless this breaks the mold, then this is going to fall in the same category as all the prior games, being liked enough that there's an adoption to the game, the same way this Kickstarter is doing well, but not liked so much that I see this one holding its value amazingly after the fact. Keep in mind, this is definitely a judgment call being made on prior games in the Evolution lineup. This could be the one that breaks that chain. This could be the one that is amazing or incredible. And again, the artwork is a solid starting point that makes me want the game, despite being always okay with the Evolution system. I actually like Evolution Climate quite a bit, and I need to dive into Oceans. I have it on my shelf, but that is a tangent. But that is overall Evolution. One is it's certainly a risk, could hold its value, could not. Hard to say for sure, and I'm being a little skeptical just primarily based on other games in the system. Although there's exclusive content here, so that could be a factor. Either way. Moving on from there, to Seas of Havoc from Rock Manor Games. Seas of Havoc is their newest game from Rock Manor Games, bringing you a piratey deck building game of worker placement as you sail the 7 seas, or really just one sea, but it crosses over and you can cross back and forth from one side to the other, so it all adds up to the 7 seas. But Seas of Havoc is basically bringing you, like I said, deck building worker placement. You're going to have your primary boat, and then you can have your skiffs. Your skiffs are your workers. Every single round is going to have a round where you take your skiffs and you place them out to various spots to get resources, to build your deck, to prep for the next round. From there, you're going to go ahead and take the actual sea round, where you take those cards that you just acquired, which also goes into a little engine of deck building as well, and then you try to figure out how to ram other players, how to shoot your cannonballs at them, how to navigate around to gather the treasure, basically trying to navigate around the board and manipulate it in a way that gives you the best, board exploration and all that stuff. Combine some other aspects such as rocks you can hit, or whirlpools you can spin your boat around, or gusts of wind that can push you, and you basically have a deck building, worker placement, sailing the 7 seas, blasting people with cannonballs kind of game. That's what's going on over here at a higher level. As far as pledge levels, Pledge Level has $65 for the standard retail edition of the game, which comes to you with, wooden components, and the backers receive the Sea Monster expansion for free. Then we have $89 for the Captain exclusive deluxe edition of the game. This is the one that's going to be focusing more on that Kickstarter exclusive, the limited availability. They'll sell it on their website, at conventions, all that stuff, but this is primarily going to be the Kickstarter exclusive version of the game for $89, and all backers are getting that Sea Monster expansion for the game. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? It's hard to say for sure. Rock Manor Games has had a back and forth with some of the games as how well they have done in general. A Set of Watch is, I think, their most popular game as far as general acceptance from the ratings and all that stuff. Although I might be missing one. They have Maximum Apocalypse. I know they have that. They have the Few and the Curse with that cowboy western theme game, and that's the one I actually want to compare this to. It's harder to compare it to. This is a bigger box game for them, so I'm not going to compare it to Set of Watch or any of their smaller games. But I will compare it to Maximum Apocalypse and Few and the Curse, which are both a little harder to exactly call whether this holds its value or not, because both of those are systems that definitely have sales on the secondhand market that very much back the original pricing point, but also have sales that are lower than the price point. Meaning, in other words, my opinion of this game, without knowing more, just going based on Maximum Apocalypse and just going on Few and the Curse, is that this likely will fall into the same spot. This is one that if you back the game and if it's not for you and you turn around and sell on the secondhand market, you likely will get some degree of money back. How much money ranges drastically. There are people who definitely took $20, $30 hits on those games when they sold in the secondhand market, and there are people who managed to get all their money back on the Kickstarter. So definitely a risk as far as whether it's a game for you and whether you turn around and sell it. This could be the most popular one in the series. It's absolutely possible as well. But generally I find that looking at a company and seeing how their games have fared has usually done well as far as seeing how future games fares. Never a guarantee, but always a good extrapolation point. So I would say overall, this is one where you might lose something, you might be able to get all your money back. It kind of depends, and I'm not willing to say any firm certainty. It's just somewhere in the middle over there. Moving on from there to Jiangnan Life of Gentry. Now this is the game on the list that I know the least about the actual gameplay. Primarily just because of how many keywords they have, and without watching 3 reviews, I tried watching one. I just don't know I don't have a good feel for the gameplay. I know there's a ton of keywords, and I've talked about this multiple times when I've talked about this game. It's a worker placement, area control, action tile drafting, bag building board game for 1 to 4 players. That is a mouthful of stuff. They have some general gifs on the page as far as how the game works. I don't have a feel for the gameplay, so I'm not going to try to heavily explain it. What I will say is the Board Game Geek did the best video that I have. That's the one that I felt that gave me the clearest picture, not enough to convey it back to you, but if you want to figure out how the game plays, the Board Game Geek has the best video that I saw from the ones that I watched. There's a lot of content in the game, so I didn't watch them all. And this has been coming from Medeus Game Design, who has a few games under their belt. I think that the game on Kickstarter that the last game they had a few Kickstarters under the belt. The last game they had on Kickstarter was Mini Express, I want to say. Not Mini Rails, Mini Express. A little bit of a train stock game that plays in a shorter time frame. Looked pretty decent, actually. I remember covering it on Kickstarter. I still kind of want to do it. I had self-control and did not back it. I'm trying to have self-control for this entire episode. There's like 7 different things I want to back today. I'm actually holding fairly strong on most of them, but some of them I'm getting. We'll talk about that another time. In any case, Jiangnan Life of Gentry is one that's coming in. 619 backers, 18 days to go, $48,000, and they have a few different pledge levels over here. They have $1 for PM access. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, jumping back for a bit, Ostia is not going to have a PM. So they cover this in the FAQ, but if you do back this game, don't back it at $1 hoping you'll upgrade in the pledge manager. They're not going to have a pledge manager. Back the actual pledge you want on Kickstarter. Going back to Jiangnan over here, $65 for the retail edition of the game, and $89 for the deluxe edition of the game, and $139 for the deluxe all-in. That's going to be deluxe components, going to be inserts, going to be, let me see if I can find over here where that covers all the thing. Here we go. Here's the retail edition of the game, $65 for all this stuff over here. Then for the deluxe edition of the game, we have all that, but we also have the party boards, the character standees, the resource pack, the metal ingots pack, and the 5th player pack. And then for the deluxe all-in, we have all of that, but we also have a wooden insert and playmat bag. So it depends how heavily you want to invest in the system, and there's a lot of positive things said about the game. Again, I don't have a good feel for it, so I'm not the right person to look at as far as that information. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? It's hard to say, because of the fact that their only game in the past has been a lighter game, a smaller game, a smaller box game, smaller price point, and even that one didn't do a great job holding its value. There are some people who managed to sell it for what they paid for, and there's plenty others who took a $10, $15 hit on their pledge. I would say that I'm skeptical that Jiangnan will hold its value. It does not mean that it won't. It just means that I am skeptical that the price point versus the game over here, the fact that it's pulling in 690 backers, 619 backers, the fact that the price points range from $65 all the way up to $139 for this game, I'm skeptical that this one does well on the secondhand market. If you want those exclusive, if you want those extras, you don't want to deal with the secondhand market, Kickstarter might be the best place for you to get your hands in it. But again, regular reminder that we have Through the Ages for $55. That's an 8.4 in the 9th highest game of all time. That is a great price point to jump in on any game, and I'll regularly be doing this every single 2-back or not 2-back as a reminder. But that's Jiangnan. It's definitely a bit of a risk. Lots of positive coverage around the game. It might be incredible, but it's also coming at a decent price point for the experience you're getting. Moving on to Captain's Log. Captain's Log, which is going to be the second last game we're talking about today. Captain's Log is a sandbox experience. Think reminiscent to Merchants and Marauders, to Zeo Legends of a Drift system. It's basically a game where you're going to be charting the 7 seas, navigating your ship around, trying to engage in fights, trying to engage in navigating across the wind or against the wind, trying to direct your ship across the oceans as you try to deal with delivering cargo, getting the favors of various nations. Again, Merchants and Marauders is going to be the closest direct comparison I can think of as far as what this game system is bringing to the table. It's going to be a 1 to 4 player game because there's a bunch of similar to Merchants and Marauders. There's going to be a lot of NPC characters that are coming to the game, although they're being dealt with in a very different way, and so that NPC system allows you to also engage in a full solo mode of this game, and that's effectively Captain's Log, first created from Present is Future Games. The price point is going to be the biggest factor, and honestly, the fact that they currently have 710 backers and $62,000 raised with the price point that they have is an extreme accomplishment, because the price point is coming in at $92 for this game. In general, for a first-time creator to convince people to spend $92 on a game it's a good job. They're clearly doing something right as far as being able to show this game to people, getting in front of people, and giving them an incentive to spend $92 on a game from a first-time creator. But that's both an accomplishment, but also I think the reason why it isn't necessarily have even more backers, even more followers to the game, because this game, I mean, it looks good, but overall the price point is definitely something that's going to scare people off. As far as should you back it, should you not, at the end of the day, that price point is going to be the same factor, the same problem. Generally, games that have a high price point from first-time creators don't do that great on the secondhand market. Generally, there are certainly exceptions. There are certainly things that break that mold, but unless they fit into a certain genre of like 1,000,000 miniatures, and that's a whole different category. If you have an Aeon's Trespass Odyssey, that's a different conversation than throwing a $92 price point on a game that looks like Merchants and Marauders in the general overlapping feel of the game. I am skeptical that this is one that will hold its value. But again, not a guarantee. It could be the exception. The same way they have 600 or whatever it is, 710 people who are willing to back the game now. It could be one of those that are the exception. But I am skeptical that it is. I would not call this a safe back. I would call this more of a risk that, if you want the game, Kickstarter might be the best time to get your hands on it if you don't want to deal with the secondhand market, but I do not think that you'll be able to get your $100 back if this is not a game for you. And lastly, we have Trekking Through History. Trekking Through History, 2,500 backers, $140,000 raised, 21 days to go, coming from Underdog Games. This is the third game in their series. They have Trekking the National Parks, they have Trekking the World, and then they have Trekking Through History. Trekking Through History takes the same general set collection, the light gameplay, accessible gameplay, set collection, and it brings it to you, instead of traveling around a board, you are traveling through time. So different mechanisms at play as far as how you manage the time, manage your time crystals, and try to figure out the best way to collect the sets that you need and score as many points as possible while filling your own personal itinerary board. The game's Kickstarter is going to come with 2 modules. The Kickstarter is going to come with a Powers and Abilities module, as well as a Solo Mode module, both of which are Kickstarter exclusive. So if you want to, get exclusive content over here, these are going to be Kickstarter exclusive modules to the game, the Time Warp and the Solo Mode. So those are going to give you different options to dive into it. And it's interesting that they have Solo Mode as Kickstarter exclusive. That's always a little bit tricky, but if you want the Solo Mode for this game, it's Kickstarter exclusive, so you're going to have to factor that in. It's coming in to you at $50 for the game over here. $50 for the game for the price point of the game, with free shipping to the continental US, which is a big deal. That's important. I remember when I covered Trekking the National Parks, Trekking the World, when I covered Trekking the World, I missed that they had free shipping to the United States, and to this day I still feel bad that I missed that. It's not, at the end of the day, I'm sitting here saying things to a lot of people, and if I miss an important detail, it's not good. But this time, they definitely have free shipping as far as international, which is something we don't see nowadays quite as much, by the way. Free shipping on Kickstarter is something we just don't see anymore. It used to be a regular thing. Now it's mostly gone. But anyways, Tracking through history. So, should you back it? Should you not? Will it hold its value? If we look at Tracking the World as the closest reference point, this is one that has been one that people lose $5, $10 on. If you look at the secondhand market and people who bought it, I think the original one was $40 with free shipping. If you look in the secondhand market, price points tend to range from $25 to $35 on the game. $25 is a little low, generally $30 to $35 on the game, with a few price points here and there at $40. So I would say that if Tracking Through History is anything to go by, and yes, it's $10 more, but also times have changed, prices have gone up, you have 2 Kickstarter exclusive modules, I would say that it is likely that this is another one that you will also lose $5, $10 on. Just going by the other games, like I said already, their series is a lighter series, and if you look at lighter games, they generally have a slightly harder time holding their value. Their games are well produced and they're well loved, which is why they come close to holding their value. But if you want to get your hands on this game, your options are going to be retail, where you will not get those exclusive items, but you will get the game for cheaper. Kickstarter, where you'll pay a little more, but you'll get those exclusive modules. Or secondhand market, where you might be able to get your hands on the modules, and you might even be able to get it at a decent price point, but you're probably not saving that much because you have to pay shipping. As far as the person who bought it on Kickstarter, they're going to lose $5, $10 because that's what's going to happen on the secondhand market, or at least likely to happen on the secondhand market. And that is everything, which brings us to Pick of the Week. We made good time today, covered a lot of Kickstarters, made good time. It's time for the Picks of the Week. Picks of the Week, I picked 2 things in general. The first thing I picked is the game that is the most likely to hold its value from all the games. It's not the cheapest game, it's the one that's most likely to hold its value and be a good back for people who think that, get it now versus get it later. And the second is my personal interest pick of the week. As far as those games, for my value pick, I'm going to be picking Thunder Road Vendetta. Thunder Road Vendetta, I think, is easily, almost guaranteed to be the best value pick from all the games we covered today. As far as my personal interest pick, I actually am kind of interested in Evolution New Beginning, as well as several other games, but I'm not going to pick that. For my personal interest pick, I'm going to pick La Granja. I've really enjoyed my gameplay of this one. Again, you can check that out over on Crackle. I really enjoyed my games of this, diving into it again, and I'm very curious what the modules will bring and add to the table, and how they will change up the game system. I am very optimistic that there are at least some modules that will make this a game that stays in my collection, but it's also not a guarantee. But as far as my personal interest pick of the week, La Granja is going to win out over several other competitors, from Thunder Road to Evolution to Chang'An. There's a whole bunch of games that I was interested in, but I'm going to pick La Granja for that. And that's basically everything. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for sticking with me through another 2 back and not to back. And again, the reminder that Through the Ages is a great game for $50, $55 or so that you can definitely get your hands on without all this Kickstarter price points and FOMO and expensive stuff and all of that. Until next time, have a good one. And if you're still here, if you've made it this far, the real question is, why am I still here? Well, I'm still here to secretly tell you behind the scenes, in case you missed it, that is, that we have Mind MGMT coming to Kickstarter tomorrow, okay? This game coming to Kickstarter tomorrow. This is basically Mind MGMT. If you missed it, this is your opportunity to get the deluxe version of the game. They're also going to be adding secret cards to the game. For those are basically, if you missed the original Mind MGMT, has these opportunities to find secret cards, and it's going to be giving you the opportunity to get those secret cards printed, so you can actually just have nice quality cards you can add to your game and modify the game even further. This is one of the best, no, not one of the best, this is the best 2021 game as of right now for me. This is my first pick from top games of 2021. I love Mind MGMT. Everyone who's reviewed it that I've seen has absolutely adored this game, from Dice Tower to Shut Up and Sit Down to Crackle to myself. Every single amount of coverage I've seen on MindGMT has been fantastic. I don't want to hype you up. I mean, I am hyping you up, but this is a phenomenal game. You know how I just pointed at Through the Ages and said that's a $55 game that's incredible and amazing and all that? If I had to pick MindMGMT or Through the Ages, I'd pick MindMGMT any day of the week, and you do not need the deluxe version of this game. To be very clear, the retail version of MindMGMT will be perfectly suitable, and it will save you $50, $60. Okay, so that's the flip side. You're not getting any extra gameplay content with the deluxe version. You're just getting a nicer box, nicer inserts, some nicer pieces. But the plain retail version of MindMGMT, for whatever it is, $40, $50 as opposed to $90, will be significantly an amazing experience, an absolutely incredible experience, and one that, if you like hidden movement at all, you should not miss out on this one. But I'm very excited for this one. I'm happy for all the people who will have the opportunity to get their hands on this game that is absolutely amazing. I think you do have to like hidden move. I don't think it's going to be a good game if you don't like hidden move. But that's a little behind the scenes secret stuff. Don't tell anyone I told you.